What was the best "you have no power here" moment you have ever seen? I told my ex I was getting remarried. He told me he was going to stop me and put a lien on my house, which I bought with my money 6 years after the divorce. My son would come home from visitations telling me how his dad was going to stop the wedding and I'd have to pay him all of this money, la-di-da. Get to court. His attorney goes blah 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 for what felt like forever. My lawyer, yes, I had to freaking get one, stands up and simply hands the judge the divorce papers, showing the disbursement of funds and how my ex isn't owed anything. Judge looks at ex's lawyer and basically asks, "Did you even ask for this document before filing?" and dismisses the case. A coworker friend of mine was flying back from a sales conference in Vegas, and he was able to upgrade to a first-class seat. We had this B sales VP that was on the same flight. She was the snobby, entitled type with a full-time nanny and giant McMansion in the suburbs, and she generally treated people who worked for her like servants. She sees him in a first-class seat as she's making her way to coach and asks him how he got that seat. He used points to upgrade. As people are getting settled in, she makes her way back up to the first-class cabin and asks to speak with the lead flight attendant. She tells him that one of her underlings is sitting in first class, and that she needs to switch with him since she's higher on the corporate ladder. The guy can't believe what he's hearing, but she won't take no for an answer. Finally, he tells her she has to go back to her seat, or she will be escorted off the plane. She made a complete A of herself in front of the whole first-class cabin. This one just made me sad. People who really internalize that a corporate ladder has any relation to people's worth are only hurting themselves in the end. We had an HR lady who was extremely power hungry. She is walking around with the president of the company who flew in from Japan. She rushes him through the warehouse, just spits out, "Oh, these are the warehouse guys. We don't have to stop and talk to them." He stops, walks over, and starts talking to me about my last vacation, how buying my house went. You could just see her fuming behind him as we talked for almost 45 minutes. I've had multiple meetings with him. We knew each other very well. I don't think he liked her and drug it out on purpose because I was thrilled to just see her standing there bored as ever. Karen walking into a gay bar to tell us off for making God cry. Literally no power. I worked for 8 years servicing communications equipment on site. 5 of those years were as the department manager. When oil was found in our area, we got so busy we could barely even think. Most of my team were pulling 12-hour days, 6 days a week, and we were struggling to hire people quick enough. One day, the CEO texted and said he hired an assistant manager for me, which was something I desperately needed. I was dirty as heck from my previous job and swung by the store to pick him up and take him to one of our sites where he would be doing paperwork. The moment he got in the truck, he immediately started talking crap. He started telling me about how everything we were doing is so effed up, and the department manager, my name, was a total moron, and he would have my job within a few months. I just sat and mostly listened. He obviously didn't know anything about my industry, and every time he would say something wrong, I would try to politely correct him, and he'd either backtrack or insist that I was trained wrong. When we got to the site, out in the middle of the West Texas desert, he complained about the layer of dust on everything and ordered me to clean up the entire site. When I sat down at my desk, the guy continued to nag my ear off about everything that was wrong and chastised me for sitting down at my desk when he told me to clean up the site. So I called for a taxi, filled out a notice of termination, and handed it to him. He looked absolutely shocked. Then he defiantly protested that only the CEO could fire him. I said, "And my name, right?" He sheepishly nodded. So I stuck my hand out for a handshake and introduced myself. I can teach anyone how to service equipment, but I don't have a clue how to teach someone not to be an a-hole. I had a boss whose #1 hiring philosophy was, "We can teach people work skills, but we can't teach them what their parents should have taught them." Been a guiding principle for me when hiring ever since. One of my new employees came from a competitor who is, shall we say, not as put together as we are. Her former boss had actually called me to yell at me about poaching his consultants, which, in and of itself, is weird enough. However, a few weeks after she started, the dude rolled up at our office. He had apparently been calling her to get her to finish an analysis for him, and she just ghosted him. I went to the lobby to see what the heck he was doing here. He started in on me again, and then she happened to walk by. I didn't fully understand the conversation, but at one point, he literally demanded she do this analysis. She just said, "Or what?" and waited a few beats before turning on her heels and walking away. I did the old hand on his back, point to the door universal symbol for leave or a large security man will make you leave. Never heard from him again. I have one that crosses with, "I don't work here, lady," a bit. I have a job, but I will still do interviews every couple years. This means the script is flipped a bit. They have to convince me to work there. Anyway, I got to town early, so I stopped at a bakery to get something to eat. The woman went in the back to get it, and this squat toad of a woman walks in, yells at me to get her order, and then yells at me again for not getting up right away to serve her. When I point out that I do not in fact work there, she goes off on me how important she is, etc. We can skip the play-by-play. I go to the interview, head of IT, and the toad woman walks in. She has this evil grin on her face. I stop everything. I point at the toad woman, and I say something like, "I have seen how your management treats people, and I have no interest in working for you." And I take my resume out of his hands and walk out. The look on her face was priceless. Oh, and he had walked in with the print of a resume, so I took his copy. My job right before my current one. Property manager. The owner was an absolute jerk. He was heartless and rude and racist, and I loathed him. I hated every day going into that job, but I needed the money. I was applying daily to my dream company in hopes that eventually I'd be accepted. In the meantime, every time I complained or mentioned something to my supervisor, I was told to shut up and get on with it. He was paying me too much to have opinions. 3 years after, we were a small office, and the receptionist and assistant property managers had quit. I finally got accepted into my dream company and happily put in my 2 weeks' notice. In desperation, he offered me more money, a higher position, better benefits, which were laughable. When I said no, he asked why. I had never felt more gleeful than that moment of when I said, "I don't know, I'm not paid to have opinions here." That was a year ago, and even now, the look on his stupid old face gives me joy to this day. The guy that I'd gone on a few dates with introduced me to his parents. Things went well, or so I thought. He drives me home. We end up talking and drinking a few beers. I didn't want him on the road with any alcohol in his system, and I enjoyed his company. So we end up hanging out till 3 a.m. His mom starts blowing up his phone, demanding that he comes home. So he drives himself home to find out that he'd been locked out of his house. His mom said that he can sleep outside. He shouldn't be spending time with someone like me. Still don't know what she meant by that. And that I'm just another stop on the P train. He tells her not to talk about me like that. To which she says, "When you're under my roof, I'll say whatever I want about whoever I want." So he picks up his phone, calls me, and asks if he can stay at my place for a little while. It's been 7 years. We're engaged, have a dog, a cat, and a happy life. I also plan on throwing some supple train themes into the wedding/celebration after the end of the plague. I used to work for a super jerky manager when I worked at McDonald's. This guy was horrible to us. He was constantly bullying us, crap-talking us to customers, and doing everything in his power to make us miserable. Well, so many people complained about him that he ended up getting fired. New manager was great. He was super chill and understanding with us all. A couple weeks after he took over, the old D-bag comes in and starts talking about how terrible the store looks, how our service is crappier than ever, and how much this store needs him. The new manager looked at him and said, "If you don't leave, then the cops are going to make you." When the D-bag didn't move, new awesome manager stuck to his guns and called the cops. The D-bag is no longer allowed on any McDonald's property in the city and has a restraining order against him.